Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
We're back.
We are back. And you guys may be aware of what we covered a while ago. About 4 or 5 days ago, we had a former Israeli space security chief, actually the father of the Israeli space program. His name is Haim Eshed. Basically said there's a galactic federation that's been waiting for humans to reach a stage when we will understand what space and spaceships are. And he even said that President Trump was going to disclose, but then was maybe perhaps convinced otherwise.
I know, he's pretty high on the totem pole.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, really, to look at this. As you see here, did Donald Trump admit the existence of aliens and UFOs? During an interview, he claimed he could not reveal what he knows about the Roswell UFO event. Well, if there was nothing there, wouldn't he be able to reveal it? I mean, if there really was nothing there and it really was a weather balloon, wouldn't he just come straight out and say, it was a weather balloon, guys? Or it was our, maybe we were testing some secret program. Yeah, I mean, this is 1947, right? I mean, this is so long ago, you could declassify that, can't you? Unless there's ongoing things going on.
There are ongoing things, and this just keeps happening over and over and over. We get really close to them admitting disclosure, and then they're like, no, never mind.
Exactly. And, Obama kind of did the same sort of thing and saying that, yeah, I understand what's going on. No, I can't talk about it.
Yeah, they keep doing that.
So basically, doesn't that admission tell us that there's really, validity there?
I personally take it as admission.
And we talked about Paul Hellyer as well, and that was a Canadian defense minister who came straight out and said, yeah, governments are dealing with extraterrestrials. There's been a lot of surveys done recently, and there was one done 3 years ago, which basically showed that half of Americans believe there are aliens, and they are basically interested in our DNA, our bodies, our genetic material. And 27% either saw a UFO, had an interaction with a UFO or ETs, or know somebody directly that did.
And not everybody can be mistaken or wrong.
No, and, as we said, when you go down through history, the evidence is overwhelming. And, I view it, you guys know how I view it. I think that we've kind of been brought up in a religious system that doesn't want us believing there's anything else out there. If we're talking, the main Western religious system comes out of the Abrahamic tradition, in which, many people could look at Ezekiel's wheel and either say UFO or Merkaba, light body. Either way you look at it, led by a pillar of fire and led by a cloud, again, thinking it makes perfect sense. And as I shared with you guys, I studied the Bible since I was 11, first reading it on my own, cover to cover at 11 years old. And by the time I hit around 20, it hit me that this is really an ET thing. Not that there isn't a God of the multiverse, doesn't mean that there isn't a universal consciousness that is guiding and directing everything. Just that what we're talking about in there is a ET story, an interdimensional extraterrestrial story.
Right. If you do read the Bible and look at it through that kind of a lens, you can easily see the ET influence.
And that doesn't mean that the being known as Jesus, Yeshua, wasn't real as well. But when we look at the power structure that's been in control of this planet for thousands of years, it's distorted and changed and twisted everything in order to maintain that power structure.
Right. We are in a fishbowl.
Yes, exactly. We are in a fishbowl. We look over to the Vatican and we see so much symbology that's pointing to ETs with elongated heads. It's pointing to the significance of the pineal gland. It's pointing to so many mysteries. The Vatican telescope Lucifer. You can't make this stuff up, guys.
Right. I mean, they can't keep it hidden forever. It's hidden in plain sight everywhere.
And we have evidence that they like to dismiss and say, well, it's just got to be, people distorting their heads. Well, why would they do that? Well, because they thought they were going to emulate the gods. Well, who did they see in the first place to get that idea?
Yeah, they give themselves away often.
And then what about the location of the foramen magnum, which the spinal cord goes through, which is in a different place than Homo sapiens? And actually, there's been DNA results that show that this is something a little different. And it's even interesting, too. I made a video on Homo capensis, which got kind of buried, because it's touching on truth. And now you could actually look it up and you'll see that there's a recognition of this as a different type of being, even though it's not discussed.
Right, it's drip disclosure.
Yeah, and we have more drip disclosure going on as well. This year's Vatican Nativity scene is something else. It features a Sumerian astronaut, also holding a skull. It's just weird when we look at this. The Vatican has a lot of weird stuff. Yeah. They have a sculpture of the second coming of Christ that looks like something from a horror show.
And the Dyson sphere.
And they have a Dyson sphere out there. I mean, the hints are all there, guys. We've been monitored, watched, and tinkered with forever.
And kept in this little box, and they tell us, don't you dare look outside of this box or you're going to go to hell and burn.
And that's why people are fear-based, and that's why people think that, still the sun revolves around the earth is flat, and, that everything is just either angels and demons and God, and there's nothing else. It's fear-based conditioning that keeps people locked in a box. So very, very curious addition this year. We've talked about the so much of the artwork. For one, the halos, they represent somebody that has an awakened kundalini and an expanded consciousness. Why do all the saints, why do the disciples, why does Christ have a halo? Well, because of that, the expanded consciousness. And, there's an explanation for all this. And here's a question: in which Vatican's 2020 manger includes a joint Viking alien invasion, right? This is crazy, but interesting too. Robert Sefer Atlantean Gardens does a really good job uncovering, and a lot of you guys watch him, and putting all these connections together, which he traces back to Atlantis, which is not so mythical, really.
I know. I mean, look at that. That's obviously a space helmet.
Yeah. And again, the Vatican, all of them, they have to give us strict disclosure, and at the same time, we know there's going to be misdirection. Yeah. We know it because the humans that have been controlling us here are fearful of losing control. Yet at the same time, we are all going to get disclosure, whether they want it or not. The beings out there are desirous of disclosure so that we could become part of something bigger, and it could all go forward in the light instead of hidden in the darkness. And they're being forced to play their hands, but they're going to try to play their hands so that they can maintain control. That's the bottom line, and that's what they do. That's what they've been doing for thousands of years.
It is. It's all about the control.
It is, and a lot of people are buzzing about this nativity scene as it's just kind of odd. But when we go through time, and what's under there, that's what we're all wondering. We don't know what's under there. Is it the Ten Commandments, maybe?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Really? Okay, yeah. That's what I was getting to. The Ten Commandments given to us by, interdimensional, extraterrestrial. And there's evidence like this foot. Do you think somebody just chiseled and carved this foot? This looks like a real foot. This is Michael Tellinger. By the way, there's great detail to this foot, and it happens to be about 4.5 feet long. So this being might be 36, 40 feet tall. Yeah. And we have all these legends of the giants all over with humans. As we've been, talking about and covering, we see them, flying, a representation of flying in the sky. But you know what? He's a man. He's a humanoid being flying in the sky. And meanwhile, the humans on the ground have their hands tied behind them and are being led by ropes connecting each one of their necks. And here they're being admonished by some other being that seems to be in charge, who's floating a little bit over the ground here, denoting authority perhaps. This is so reminiscent of the African slave trade, is it not?
It really is. I mean, all this artwork says so much.
I think it's pretty clear, it's pretty obvious, and we could put together millions of pieces of evidence, millions and millions. The evidence is overwhelming. As you see another case of a very, very large giant, maybe about 16 feet tall or so. Yeah. And the humans, again, being led around like a dog on a leash, this one being stepped on, put in his place, hands tied behind the back. This is a repetitive thing we see in all these ancient reliefs. And we have Gilgamesh, who was, a demigod, twice the size of humans who are slaving away, fearful. Meanwhile, the whip is up being used. Here he's grabbing somebody by the shoulder. Very telling, is it not?
Oh, these beings, some are just really look so mean.
They do. And we even have hybrid species. Yeah. This almost looks like a human head on some sort of dog or pig or who knows what type of animal body. Again, being led, by a rope in a procession.
They must have found something useful for them.
So, will it all be revealed in our lifetimes? What do you think, Cindy?
I feel it's going to, yes.
I think we're really close. I think we're understanding what's really going on. And, this is not to say that there are not angelic beings. We know. I mean, we have interactions with them and we see them. They appear to be very angelic. They have an angelic agenda where they're helping people. They're keeping order in the universe in a good way.
Well, yeah, they feel very good. You can feel it with the heart.
And then there are demonic beings. We've seen those well. We've seen and experienced beings from everything from, I wouldn't call the Greys demonic. They're not. Some of them are robotic androids. Others are hybrids. They're all kind of used as worker bee slaves when you get down to it. Even the tall ones are still, doing their job under the reptilian influence. But then there are these other energies that will appear like black holes with glowing red eyes. We've seen, shadow beings, very, very, very negative in intention. And now those beings I would call demonic. And we encounter them on a regular basis. We encounter them with people that we work on. And, any given week, we might work on 20, 30 people. Typically, that's probably an average people that we see. We try to get it compacted into like 3 or 4 days. So we can focus on videos the other time and doing research. But all the time, we're exercising these dark energies from people.
Yeah, it is a blessing if you can relieve someone of that burden, but then we put the ball in their court so that we now have taken that being away from them so they have a free start. But then, it's also up to them to keep their vibration high, to keep that being from latching back on. It's kind of a interesting process.
Yeah, I've been doing this even before Cindy and I got together, and I was part of Eastern States Paranormal Society, and we did a lot of investigations all throughout the southeastern part of the United States. Most of the guys with me were in the military, so it disbanded when they got reassigned. Most of them were reassigned to Germany from South Carolina, different air bases, and we had a lot of interesting encounters. And after we would do the investigations, a lot of times people would want a cleansing, and so I would do the cleansings and the banishings, and they worked. They worked, and it's the same thing with the remote work that we do now as well. So I've probably cleansed between people and places over 1,000 easy, probably several thousand different circumstances. There are many dark energies out there. There are many energies we would call demonic out there. There are parasitic energies. Those are super common, just as common as you have ticks and leeches and things like that on this physical earth plane. It's the same thing in the astral realm, and it's exactly the same thing. And those are the most common thing that we see. In Taoism and in medical QiGong, there's actually chapters dedicated in medical QiGong books to these beings and getting rid of them.
Right, and they are like etheric parasites too that stick onto the energy body and they just drain you. So that can make people feel extra exhausted.
As well as change the personality,
Oh, yeah.
influence people, change the personality. So all the legends of demonic possession are real. They are real, not every single one of them. Some of them have other sources, but it is a real thing. So we're not negating that. But what we're saying is, yes, there's demons. Yes, there's angels. Yes, there's extraterrestrials. There's all sorts of different beings out there.
There sure is.
Yeah, it's busy. It's busy. Beings are constantly walking through us every single day. In some cases, these beings are opportunistic, and they will see an opportunity because life does feed off of life. Life feeds off of energy and the life force. And so they will latch on when given an opportunity. And some of the things that lower our vibration are, all the things we see that are hammering us in the news, anything that creates fear, anything that creates terror and panic or anger, jealousy, all those negative energies, those negative emotions create opportunities for these beings to latch onto us.
Oh yeah, and look at all the chaos right now. It's like a feeding frenzy if people were, and some people do allow it. It is. It's horrible.
And there are some things that, people may be prescribed, so to speak, that can do the same thing. And that is often the case, as we see often. I mean, we know when we could sense somebody has some nasty attachments, almost always they have been ingesting things that may mask a certain issue, but also lower the vibrational frequency and allow the door to open so that these things can then latch on.
It does definitely create portals, yeah.
It creates portals, exactly. So guys, thank you so much for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. If anybody needs to reach us, reach out to us at EEARTS@protonmail.com or at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. Thank you for your support. Stay safe out there. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.